Began to read the masters of 19th century fiction. Those were the authors that I was drawn to. The Bronte sisters, Victor Hugo, Thomas Hardy, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Flaubert, Stendhal, etc. And I would read each of those works and dissect them as I was reading. I would try to study how they begin and end a chapter, how a character is introduced, how a character exits a scene, where a plot goes, how it develops.
Why did reading and becoming better educated change your life so very, very much, though? I mean, what is it about that process of learning that would make a man like you start to feel more, remorse about the crimes you've committed, to want to change your life?
I never had like a hallelujah revelation that there's a God, which happens a lot with people in prison. Basically, just through reading, I saw that there's a scheme throughout history. We're going somewhere as a race, that things happen for a reason. The sun rises and sets. The moon has a gravitational pull on the earth. There's something spectacular going on just in our environment around us that we tend to neglect day in and day out. I believe, and I don't know if it's inherent in me or it's through reason, which I like to think, that there's a higher power. So that said, I began to draw closer to a recognition of this higher power, and that this higher power is watching our everyday lives, sort of judging us, if you may. And I thought it would be necessary to instill a strict moral code within myself that I would carry throughout my life and live correctly, in which I've done.
What did your mob friends think of all of that?
Oh boy, sign him up for the psych. He's got to be going crazy. Maybe we should whack him. A lot of funny responses, but for the most part, once they would speak to me, they'd see that I didn't crack up. Then they'd start to have a newfound respect for me, more so than I'd ever gotten as a mobster, actually.
What is the book, Louis, that you would recommend to a young man who is on the verge of entering a life of crime? That one fantastic book that might set him off down a different path?
Gosh, okay, I'm a peculiar case because I love biographies, and I would recommend the biographies of great people. One of my favorite was Winston Churchill. He displayed tremendous courage in a time when people desperately needed a great leader, and he had a moral compass which guided him throughout his days, as opposed to like a Stalin. Even as a criminal, that struck a chord with me. Here I am reading, we shall fight them on the beaches, as opposed to we shall break their kneecaps and bloody their noses up until they pay the money. It's a big difference from where I was, what I was reading.
Obviously, your life, it's almost happened in two parts, hasn't it? A bit of a bad start and, hopefully a good ending. Do you ever come across anybody who you really hurt during that bad start? Have you met any of the victims of your crimes?
I did go to one victim that was on my mind for a long, long time, and it was her son owed me $1,000 when I was like 18 or 19 years old, and I gave him a beating, and his mom got nervous and paid me the money. Well, she was a hard-working waitress, and it just destroyed me thinking about her as well as other victims when I was in prison. I knocked on her door the first Christmas I was home, and I had $1,500 to my name that I didn't have to spend on rent or food. And I knocked on the door, and she was first a little nervous to even confront me. And her daughter, she said, "Ma, go down and talk to him." And she came down, and I gave her it was in a knot, folded over the money. And I gave it to her, and she she didn't know what to do. She said, "Boy, you have no idea how much I needed it." And I said, "I'm sorry for what I did to you." So, that was one victim I've seen. I haven't seen any others. I pray God that they're all fine and living well, and nobody's living with any traumatic experience that I've caused them. It keeps me up nights still to this day. I wake up at night and think about it. It's there constantly. The only thing I can do is try to go on and help as many kids as I can, many people as I can. I visit prisons. I've been to quite a few prisons in the UK, and I believe I've shifted the minds of a number of people, and hopefully in my life I'll be able to help many more people that I've heard come out ahead at the end, and before I die, be able to at least be in the positive column.
Louis Ferrante, more details about his life available on our website. Now, Barry, film and television always glamorise the mob. Do you think it always will?
Well, it hasn't always done that. The Godfather, I suppose, is a perfect example of the glamorised mobster, where they've got plenty of money, no enemies because they've killed them all, hot and cold running women and everyone, what's not to like in that. But if you go back to the 30s, I think it's quite interesting that was when the crime film really began to dominate in the cinema, with films like Little Caesar and Scarface and White Heat. There were loads and loads of such films, and in them, unusually for the time, the bad guy was the protagonist. I mean, he had to get his comeuppance at the end because the censorship said that crime couldn't be seen to pay. But he was the guy the audience was asked to follow, and his enemy, the bad guy's enemy, was the establishment. And there was a kind of empathy from the audience because their enemy, they felt, was the establishment because they'd been let down, by everybody, by the establishment. And so therefore, I think it's quite possible that in this current recession, when people still feel let down by the establishment, by greedy, incompetent bankers and MPs with their snouts in our trough, that there is plenty of scope for the crime movie to make a really big comeback.
Yeah. Do you think that you can see criminals across the years in films also going from country to country, can't you? I mean, that's often sort of the Bond movies, isn't it? The Cold War dictated you have to have a Russian enemy, and then actually there were quite a few kind of Arab and Middle Eastern enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, where would the current enemy be, do you think?
Well, it would be, if we were going back to the 1930s, the current enemy, well, the current situation would be the criminal. The mobster, like Edward G. Robinson in Little Caesar, for instance, against the police, against the authority. There would probably be a rival gang in there as well. But the essential enemy is the establishment, the people who are trying to stop his nefarious activities. And I think that it's much more simple than the Bond thing, where you've got Russians, God knows who else, as the enemies. It was a much more simple plot in those days, and probably more effective because of it.
Have you ever been tempted to write a film, having sat through so many yourself?
No, I haven't. I've written 10 novels, which is probably stupid of me because there's actually much more money to be made by writing film scripts, even if the film never gets made. But there's much more satisfaction in writing novels because, as you sit there one day wondering, what have I ever done with my life? Well, if you've got a row of books on the shelf with your name on the jacket, hey, well, at least I did that.
Yeah, and you've got the pickles now as well.
Oh, I've got the pickles now as well, yeah.
It's a busy shelf.
Oh, absolutely.
You are listening to Saturday Live. It's like a rub-down with a warm BBC flannel. We have yet to meet our original bunny girl. You are listening to Saturday Live. It's like a rub-down with a warm BBC flannel. We have yet to meet our original. Much more to come from Barry Norman, and we have the inheritance tracks of the actor Ernest Borgnine, as our friends in commercial radio would say, before saying, "You're paid how much?" And here